I just don't want any more folks to die, Dutch.
We're living, Hosea, we're living. Look at me. We're living. Even you.
Leviticus Cornwall's no joke, Dutch.
Who is Leviticus Cornwall?
He's a big railway magnate, sugar dealer, oil man.
Well, how good for him. Sounds like he has more than enough to share. Gentlemen, it is time to make something of ourselves.
Your impudence will be your undoing, sir. You robbed me, sir.
And you robbed him. Funny world.
You show a criminal's grasp of sophistry, sir. I did no such thing.
You kill. I kill. I'll tell you what. You give me this ship, $10,000, and safe passage out of here, I'll let you live.
Let's go.
In the vast and intricately woven narrative of Red Dead Redemption 2, there are a number of key factors that play into the downfall of the Van der Linde gang. However, few events are as pivotal as the gang's decision to rob Leviticus Cornwall's train early in Chapter 1. This subtle early action act sets off a chain reaction that drives much of the story's tension and heavily contributes to the gang's downfall. But what if this critical moment never occurred? What if Dutch had listened to Hosea's warnings and decided against antagonizing one of the most powerful men in the West? In today's video, we will attempt to answer this question and deepen our understanding of the game's complex characters and themes, revealing how a single choice could have drastically reshaped the gang's trajectory and the world around them. If you enjoy videos like this one, be sure to subscribe. As 99% of viewers have not done so, I appreciate all of your support. Now let's dive into what might have happened had the gang not robbed Leviticus Cornwall. Cornwall is first introduced during the game's prologue, where he is depicted as a ruthless industrialist with vast wealth and influence, controlling railroads, mining operations, and oil fields across the American frontier. He embodies the encroaching force of industrialization and the decline of the Old West, making him a symbolic antagonist to Dutch and the gang's idealistic vision of freedom. The gang becomes aware of an opportunity to rob Cornwall after fleeing from the failed Blackwater heist and taking refuge in the mountains. This is where they would come across O'Driscolls, discovering their plan to rob a train loaded with valuable bonds that is scheduled to pass through. Dutch decides the gang should steal the plan and resources from the O'Driscolls to rob the train for themselves instead. Hosea, Dutch's longtime friend and advisor, warns against the heist, as he is one of the few voices of reason within the gang and understands the risks involved in targeting someone as powerful as Cornwall.
A problem. Why are we doing this? Weather's breaking, we could leave. I thought we was lying low.
Yeah, come on.
What do you want from me, Hosea?
I just don't want any more folks to die, Dutch.
We're living, Hosea, we're living. Look at me. We're living. Even you. But we need money. Everything we has in Blackwater. You fancy heading back there?
No. Listen, Dutch, I ain't trying to undermine you. I just want to stick to the plan, which was to lie low, then head back out west. Now, suddenly we're about to rob a train.
What choice have we got?
Leviticus Cornwall's no joke, Dutch.
Who is Leviticus Cornwall?
He's a big railway magnate, sugar dealer, oil man.
Well, how good for him. Sounds like he has more than enough to share.
Dutch!
Gentlemen, it is time to make something of ourselves.
He cautions Dutch that this robbery could bring down unwanted heat on the gang, potentially jeopardizing their entire way of life. He reminds Dutch of the original plan, to lie low and eventually make enough money to make it back out west. Hosea's warning reflects his deep understanding of the beginning of the changing world and the dangers of drawing attention to themselves, especially from someone who can easily marshal vast resources to hunt them down. But Dutch, driven by his need to secure a large score to fund his vision, chooses to ignore it. This moment highlights the beginning of a growing divide between Dutch's increasingly reckless ambitions and Hosea's more cautious, calculated approach. At this point in the game, the gang was already on the run after the botched Blackwater job, which left them low on morale and out of money. Many gang members were either killed or wounded. The gang fled to the snowy mountains of Colter, trying to recover from their losses. Starving and freezing to death with the Pinkertons on their tail, the last thing they needed was to attract more attention. But as you know, the gang went through with the robbery regardless, and the heist was initially a success. showcasing the gang's skill and coordination, as they were able to execute the robbery. However, there was one setback as their dynamite lever failed, and they had to chase down and jump onto the train. Cornwall's power is demonstrated immediately during this pursuit when his men, along with Pinkerton agents, pursue the gang with relentless determination. But the gang still managed to stop the train in a remote area, overpower the guards, and access the safe containing the valuable bonds and extra money. The gang members, especially Dutch and Arthur, feel a sense of triumph as they secure the much-needed funds, believing that this score will help them recover from their recent setbacks. At this moment, the gang's spirits are lifted, and Dutch's leadership appears vindicated, with the successful heist temporarily masking the deeper troubles that lie ahead. As this was a decision that had far-reaching consequences, Cornwall's wealth and connections meant that he could easily mobilize law enforcement and private security, like the Pinkertons, to hunt down the gang, exacerbating their already precarious situation, which is exactly what he did. So the Pinkertons, who were already looking for the gang after the debacle in Blackwater, upped their pursuit. This immediately forces the gang to abandon their Coulter hideout and go on the run, leading to a string of desperate relocations across the country. The constant pressure from the Pinkertons and Cornwall's men exacerbates internal tensions within the gang, as Dutch's leadership becomes increasingly erratic and paranoid. These mounting pressures strain relationships, particularly with Arthur and John Marston, whose growing doubts about Dutch's decisions begin to fracture the gang's unity. The relentless pursuit by the Pinkertons, a standoff with Cornwall's men, all combined with Dutch's escalating recklessness, ultimately drives the gang to its breaking point. Members like Micah Bell, who thrives on chaos and violence, gain more influence as Dutch becomes more desperate and paranoid. Leading to betrayal, the deaths of several members, Dutch murdering Cornwall after failing to defeat him, and the gang's eventual disintegration. Now that we fully understand the context of the decision and its consequences, we can try to answer the question of what would happen if the gang never robbed the Cornwall train. And would it have truly made a difference in the grand scheme of their fate? Given the myriad other challenges they faced, even without the robbery, the gang was entangled in a web of conflicts that would have likely led to their downfall. However, the decision to avoid Cornwall would not have been without consequences. The gang's need for money is constant, and without the funds from Cornwall's train, they would have needed to find other sources of income. This could have led them to take on more risky jobs, potentially bringing them into conflict with other powerful groups or individuals in the West. While at the same time, for the sake of the story, the gang would have found themselves facing other enemies. Several factions in the game could have become major threats in Cornwall's absence. For example, the O'Driscoll Boys, a rival gang led by Colm O'Driscoll, are a constant thorn in the gang's side. The feud between Dutch and Colm O'Driscoll is a long-standing one, rooted in personal vendettas and mutual hatred. Throughout the game, the O'Driscolls are portrayed as a constant and violent threat, often attacking the gang's camps and ambushing them during missions. If the gang had not been preoccupied with escaping Cornwall's wrath and evading the Pinkertons, the rivalry with the O'Driscolls could have escalated into an all-out war. The O'Driscolls might have launched larger, more coordinated attacks on the gang's hideouts, forcing them to be constantly on the defensive. This would have drained their resources and morale, similar to the effects of being hunted by the Pinkertons, but with a more direct, violent conflict. Furthermore, without the immediate pressure from Cornwall, Dutch might have become obsessed with finally settling the score with Colm, leading to more aggressive actions against the O'Driscoll Boys. The game could have featured more missions focused on attacking O'Driscoll camps, raiding their supplies, or disrupting their operations. This ongoing battle would have heightened the stakes for both gangs, making the conflict feel more personal and more desperate as the story progressed. Colm could have served as a major villain in the latter parts of the game. Without Cornwall's interference, this plot point could have been expanded, with Colm using more manipulative tactics to undermine Dutch's leadership and sow discord within the gang. He might have exploited the gang's internal tensions, trying to turn members against each other or even attempting to bribe or coerce members like Micah Bell, who is already shown to be treacherous and self-serving. While on the other side of the coin, characters like Kieran Duffy would be thrown into the mix. As a former O'Driscoll, he could have used his knowledge to help the gang anticipate their enemies' moves and provide valuable intelligence. This would have highlighted themes of redemption and loyalty, with Karen proving his worth to the gang by leveraging his past to aid them. Or maybe he would use the conflict to distract both gangs, while he quietly escapes the gang life he so clearly does not belong in. Additionally, Sadie Adler's character and story would have taken on even greater significance. One of the first encounters the gang has with the O'Driscolls is when they find Sadie's house, where her husband was murdered by the O'Driscolls and she is taken in by the gang. Sadie's personal quest for revenge against the O'Driscolls would have become a central narrative thread, adding depth and intensity to her character. Her desire to avenge her husband's death would be more directly intertwined with the gang's fight against their rival gang, aligning her motivations with the gang's broader goals. Throughout the game, Sadie is portrayed as a fierce, determined fighter who is deeply affected by her trauma, and this alternate storyline would have amplified her role as a key figure in the gang's efforts to defeat the O'Driscolls. Missions could have focused on Sadie's growth from a grieving widow to a formidable outlaw even more so than before, as she leads or assists in attacks against the O'Driscolls, seeking personal redemption and aiding the gang in their war against a common enemy. The storyline might have even evolved to feature a showdown between Dutch and Colm, possibly leading to a large-scale battle between the two gangs. This could have occurred in a setting similar to the Braithwaite Manor raid, but on an even larger scale, with both gangs bringing all their remaining forces to bear in a final desperate attempt to destroy the other. Another significant threat could have come from the Lemoyne Raiders, a group of embittered Confederate veterans who violently resist the federal government's presence in the South. The Raiders are heavily armed and fiercely territorial, conducting guerrilla warfare to assert their dominance in Lemoyne. If the Pinkertons had not been the primary adversaries, the gang might have found themselves in more frequent confrontations with the Raiders. The gang's attempts to operate or lay low in Lemoyne could have clashed with the Raiders' efforts to control the region, leading to a series of bloody skirmishes over territory, resources, and influence. The Raiders' anti-government stance and ruthless tactics would have made them a formidable opponent, potentially even drawing the gang into a prolonged and costly conflict. Additionally, the Braithwaites and Greys, two rival families in Lemoyne, could have posed a significant threat. These families are deeply entrenched in the region's power structure, and any attempt by the gang to operate in their territory could have led to deadly confrontations. The issue of loyalty is central to the game's narrative. Throughout the story, Arthur Morgan struggles with his loyalty to Dutch and the gang as he witnesses Dutch making increasingly dangerous and erratic decisions. The robbery of Cornwall's train is one of the first moments where Arthur begins to question Dutch's judgment, leading to his eventual disillusionment. If the gang had not robbed Cornwall, this crisis of loyalty might have been delayed. Arthur, and possibly even John Marston, might have remained more committed to Dutch's vision, believing that the gang could still achieve its goals, as Dutch stayed cautious and arranged a plan for everyone to escape. However, the underlying issues within the gang, Dutch's growing instability, Micah's manipulations, and the pressures of the changing world would have remained. The robbery of Cornwall is a catalyst, but it's not the root cause of the gang's downfall. Even without the robbery, the seeds of betrayal and mistrust were already planted. Characters like Micah Bell, who are inherently self-serving and treacherous, would have continued to sow discord within the gang. The pressures of their lifestyle, combined with the changing world around them, would have eventually led to fractures within the group, regardless of Cornwall's involvement. Leviticus Cornwall's death is a significant moment in the game, occurring when Dutch kills him during a confrontation in Annisburg. This act further escalated the conflict, leading to even greater pressure on the gang. But what if Cornwall had never been targeted in the first place? It's possible that Cornwall might have remained alive, continuing to expand his empire and solidifying his control over the West. If Cornwall had lived, his influence might have continued to grow, making him an even more formidable adversary later in the game. The gang, already struggling against the forces of modernization and law enforcement, would have faced a more entrenched and powerful Cornwall. This could have made their eventual downfall even more dramatic, as they would have had to contend with a man who had the resources to crush them completely. On the other hand, if the gang had avoided provoking Cornwall and managed to escape his attention, they might have had a chance to flee west, as Dutch often dreamed of. Without Cornwall's pursuit, they might have found a way to disappear into the wilderness, living out their days in relative peace. However, given the game's themes of inevitable change and the end of the outlaw era, it's likely that other forces would have eventually caught up with them. The decision to rob Leviticus Cornwall's train was a pivotal moment that greatly influenced the trajectory of the game. This choice set off a chain of events that exacerbated the gang's internal tensions and attracted the relentless pursuit of powerful enemies, ultimately leading to their downfall. However, even if the gang had avoided this heist, it is likely they would have faced other formidable adversaries and challenges. While avoiding the robbery of Cornwall might have temporarily slowed the disintegration of the gang and delayed characters like John Marston and Arthur Morgan losing faith in Dutch, it wouldn't have fundamentally changed the outcome of their story. The real issues within the gang stemmed from Dutch's increasingly erratic behavior and his penchant for high-risk plans that rarely succeeded. Throughout the game, Dutch is portrayed as a leader whose grandiose visions often lead to disastrous consequences. Even without the immediate pressure from Cornwall and the Pinkertons, Dutch's inclination towards dangerous schemes would likely have continued to put the gang in peril, along with his desperation that grows with each failure. Additionally, Micah Bell's manipulative nature and growing influence over Dutch further exacerbated the internal conflicts within the gang. Micah's constant encouragement of Dutch's reckless behavior, combined with his willingness to betray other gang members to serve his own interests, would have continued to sow discord and mistrust. Thus, while avoiding the Cornwall robbery might have temporarily extended the game's cohesion, the underlying issues of poor leadership, reckless decisions, and internal betrayal would have inevitably led to the gang's downfall, demonstrating that the gang's fate was sealed by more than just a single heist. If you made it this far in the video, be sure to let us know what you think in the comments below. I appreciate all of your support. Thanks for watching.